Hello, everybody. Welcome to SOUNDWAVE, where we are changing and transforming the world, our workplaces, our communities, one voice at a time. Welcome to Own Your Conversation. Now, this is a series created for all of you out there, the SOUNDWAVE Global coaches, fans, enthusiasts, and all of you folks who have done the SOUNDWAVE assessments. And of course, for those of you who somehow click onto this channel here, well, ladies and gentlemen, this is a series for everyone who wants to learn all about the strategies, the tips, the tricks on how to skillfully use our voices, target our talk, and engage people around us. And as we say here, amazing things happen between people when the quality of the conversations is good. Hello, everybody. My name is Kim Pong, and I am the global partner of SOUNDWAVE. And together with me this morning, this afternoon, wherever you are, and hosting this program is none other than Kevin himself. So a very good morning to you, Kevin. How are you doing over at Bristol in the UK?
Good morning, Kim Pong. I'm very well, thanks. It's the end of what's been a very busy, very enjoyable week. As you're aware, we've been running an accreditation program with people from many countries across Asia. It's been great fun. So yeah, I'm in a good frame of mind today. How about you?
Well, like I said, I think the last 4 days we were crediting, I think a whole bunch of people coming in from India, from China, from Hong Kong, from Taiwan, and from Singapore. It was a 4 grueling day, but it was so worth it. I don't know about you, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. Yesterday, after the last session, I totally crashed out, but it was just so worth it. To see the people who started on day one, who kind of get some understanding of what SOUNDWAVE is all about, and to be able to kind of see them by the time they graduated on the 4th day, filled with the confidence, with the aha moments, and the knowledge on how they can actually use their voices skillfully for themselves and for their clients. To me, that there's no better payback than just seeing the satisfaction of all that is happening yesterday. Yeah, so I'm good.
Good.
Yeah. Well, let me just set this program up for those of us who have actually clicked on the channel here. Well, if you're watching this program, essentially, this is a series created on SOUNDWAVE, and it's the Own Your Conversation channel. And this is a 10-part series, on the 9 verbal strategies, or as we call them here in SOUNDWAVE, the 9 voices of SOUNDWAVE. And today we are going to be talking about the TEL cluster. And the voice that we're going to be focusing on is the voice of challenge. Now, for those of you who wants to follow the series, go ahead and click on the subscribe button here. And also go ahead and click on the bell if you want us to notify you each time we post a new episode. So remember, subscribe so that you get notified and can come straight into the channels for Own Your Conversation. So let's start the way we've always started, Kevin. And I will often give you a quote that you've never seen before. And that's like a haha, gotcha, right? What do you think about that?
So it's a bit like a challenge, Kim Pong.
It is like a challenge, and this is very befitting of the occasion today. The quote I'm sharing with you is actually from one of your own countrymen. The quote is this: "There's nothing like a challenge to bring out the best in man." Sean Connery. So, what do you think of that quote?
Well, I think the first thing is I need to use the voice to correct, because Sean Connery was actually Scottish, and I think he was a follower of the Scottish National Party as well. So he was pro-independence. But so that's the first little challenge. The second one is, I think this is a common belief held by a lot of people, and I think there's some evidence to say it's true. People grow in life as a consequence of challenges. No challenges, people don't grow. I mean, it's not the only thing that helps people grow, but without challenge, we don't grow. And so I think what Connery is saying here is serious challenges that take us to the edge, really, really check out to see whether we can meet them. And in the process of trying to meet them, we discover things about ourselves perhaps hadn't previously thought of. I don't know what your experience is, Kim Pong, of rising to challenges in your life.
Well, first of all, I think challenges for me often are quite uncomfortable because it makes me think about what I'm doing and why am I doing it, and why is it that people have a totally different opinion from the things that I'm doing, right? So I think number one, often it's a little bit uncomfortable. But if I think about my life, Kevin, very often who I am today, and of which I'm really happy with my journey so far. I like all the different things that I've learned and I'm growing. I think a large part of it really resulted from the challenges that people gave to me. So while it is uncomfortable, it is absolutely necessary, at least from my perspective of growth, of development, and of change. Yeah. And this is one of the questions I'm gonna kind of ask you right off the bat. And we ask the same question pretty much in every episode for the series. The question is this: what would the world look like without the voice of challenge?
Okay, so I love this question. It's great. And I think this is the point where it's worth distinguishing between a challenge, which might be hurdle out there that we have to overcome,
Hmm.
and perhaps something that we have a little bit of control over after a
Hmm.
time,
Yeah.
from the voice to challenge. So the voice to challenge is when I turn around to you and say to you, so Kim Pong, why are you doing that again? Okay, and that in that moment, I'm posing a challenge. I'm getting you to think about what you're doing. And for a moment, you're sort of rocked back on your heels. Where did that come from? Why is he
Mhm.
saying that? How am I meant to respond? And so I think the short answer to the question is a world without the voice to challenge is a world where there is no change
Wow.
or there's very slow change.
That's
Okay.
frightening. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it is frightening. So this is the double-edged sword of
Mm.
the voice to challenge. You know, on the one hand, it's uncomfortable. Even when it's delivered skillfully, it can be slightly uncomfortable. On the other hand, without it, fundamentally, we stay forever where we are and we don't move on. And so the use of this voice does have to be handled carefully, skillfully, proportionately for impact. So the one of the mistakes we noticed that people in their Soundwave profiles who score at a very high level on challenge, the problem they encounter sometimes is that people around them are so used to them challenging everything that goes on
Yeah.
that the challenge loses its force, it loses its impact.
Yeah.
A- And they just start to people on the receiving end shrug it off and they say, well, that's just Kim Pong. He challenges
Mm.
all the time. Just ignore and then those very same people get into a sort of cycle. And at its worst, it's an accusatory cycle. Nobody around here wants to change. Okay, well, actually, the truth is people are prepared to change. They will change. They don't want to be reminded every second of the day that their job is to change.
Yeah.
That's so it's really interesting.
It is. It is. And when you say what you said just now, it just reminded not of myself, but it reminded me of some of the folks that I dealt with, because every time when I'm talking to them, some of these guys, they would almost be critical of what I'm saying, or they will almost be like attacking what I'm saying, even though I know their intentions are good. Their intentions is to kind of help me see a different side of the coin, different view. But the way they challenge, I agree, it comes to me as an attack. And because they do it so often to me, that I become so Teflon coated by
Yeah.
with their kind of challenge that it just slides off me. So my question here to you, Kevin, is just for those of us that has the challenge voice and that may have the propensity to overuse that voice and run the risk of accentuation, what would that voice look like? I mean, we say attack is one of the outcomes. What other effect do you see in the accentuation of the challenge voice?
Well, there's a sort of typical fight, flight, freeze response
Hmm.
to,
Hmm.
and probably more than any other. I was in a meeting some time ago, and we delivered day one of a Soundwave event. And generally speaking, everybody was very happy. And we did a check-in in the morning. How was it yesterday?
Hmm.
And people started to say, "Yeah, it was good. We like this. We like that. A small change here, a small change there." And then somebody arrived late to the meeting, and so she'd sort of missed a little bit of the energy in the room. Didn't quite tune into that.
Hmm.
But in any case, unbeknownst to us at the time, she'd come in with something to say. And so because she came in late, we said, so thanks for arriving. And how did you find yesterday? And the message came out very fast, very starkly. There was nothing in yesterday that I found the least bit interesting.
Oh no.
Okay. Now it's really interesting because at that moment, a room of 20 people freezes. There's silence and there is stillness. Nobody moves. As the facilitator in the room, the pressure is on me. And of course, I do what most people do in those circumstances, which is words come out of my mouth in no conceivable logical order. But as I scramble to try to find a way through, and eventually it works out okay, or it doesn't.
Mm,
But the group's reaction and my reaction in the moment are universal to this type of thing, really highly predictable. This is the effects that it has. Now, in that particular situation, it was particularly powerful because her position, coming in last as it did, was completely out of sync with the perspective of everybody else. So it was a real standout moment. But freeze.
mm,
Okay. And actually, physiologically, I don't want to be in that room. I want to run away. So
yeah,
flight is my preference in that situation.
yeah.
And a lot of other people are sitting there feeling embarrassed.
Mm.
Oh my God, how's Kevin going to get out of this one? This is going to be really difficult. And then the other thought bubble in their head was, oh, this is just typical of this person. She always has to come in and say something like that. And so it's really important to rise above the energy and the sound of the voice that's
Mhm.
coming in your, and try to listen more concretely to the words. What is she really saying? Is there substance in this concern that she has? Can I move myself to a point where I've got my feelings under control and I can engage more cognitively and say, okay, just tell me about this, because this is a fairly serious thing you're saying now.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's hardest of all to do without voice.
It is. After all, challenge is the most sensitive voice out of all the 9 voices that people kind of pick it up really easily. It's like what we often say. You hear the growl before you hear the content of the growl. You hear the sound before you hear the meaning of that sound. And that's what challenge does to all of us. And as you were sharing about your story, it reminded me of my story where I was in New York running a workshop for about 60 leaders for a pharmaceutical company over there. And what I did was that I ran the workshop and I gave everybody some time to do some reflection on a worksheet. Okay, everybody take about 5 minutes and put your thoughts down to paper and think about what we just talked about. And then I do what I always do, and that's to play some really nice reflective music to accompany while people are reflecting. Now, nothing is wrong with that. I don't think it is perfectly okay. But what happened was this: there was a lady sitting in the front of the room. The minute the music came on, she looked up and she looked at me and said, "Are you kidding me? Reflective music? Are you kidding me?" And she said it in such a strong, confident volume that everybody just looked up. And all of a sudden, 60 pair of eyes are on me. They're looking at me. Okay, what are you gonna do now? How are you gonna respond? And to be honest, it's exactly what you said. I have
Yeah.
no idea what came out from my mouth at that point in time, because all I wanted to do was to just like, let's respond, let's change, let's respond. I have no idea what's going on. And that really is that flight thing that we're talking about. So this
Yeah.
leads me to the next question here for you, Kevin. And I've been thinking a little bit about this. Is this whole idea of the accompanying voices. So my question is this: if we hear a challenge voice coming at us, whether we're prepared for it or not, what would your best advice be, and how should we respond in the best possible way? In other words, what kind of voices can we use to respond to a challenge voice?
So, excuse me, Kim Pong. I love your story, by the way, and I think in both stories we're really on the cusp between, is this a challenge or is it an attack?
It is, yeah.
And there's a big subjectivity in there. The intention of the person may be to challenge.
Yeah.
I think in both of our cases there's an element of it being received as an attack, and that's because it's so sudden. It's out of the blue. It is like the growl just jumping at us and grabbing us by the
Yeah.
throat. So, and I think this is, and I'll come back to your question, but this is one of the reasons why we talk a lot about the predictability of the voices. This situation we've described, we've both had that experience. We're not alone in having had that experience. Lots of people will recount a very similar story with a very similar effect.
Yeah.
Okay, it's really important to say this is very powerful. The predictive quality of the way we use our voices.
Hmm.
If we want to put somebody in a position where they are essentially stressed, well, this is how to do it. Now, we're not recommending that, for goodness sake. In fact, what we're recommending is, look, think carefully about how you use that voice. And so we'll come back to that probably a little later on in this conversation.
Yeah.
But in terms of how you react effectively, so if the tiger comes out, the challenge tiger comes out of the bush at you, what do you do? I think there are a number of possible responses. I think the first one is just to try and hold the stillness.
Mm,
Actually say, wow, okay, can I just have a minute? Or can I just take a few seconds to process what you said?
mm,
Because this is very strong.
yeah.
Okay. And actually just calm the energy down for you and in the room, if you can be sort of quick-witted enough to do that.
Mm,
And I think then the move is to inquire and to say, okay, you obviously have presented that point of view very forcefully. I would like to understand what's behind it.
mm.
What's the issue? Let's talk about
All right. So just pause for a second here. So essentially, I'm just tracking what you're saying with all the different voices. So your response is number one, you responded with an inquire, then you follow up with an articulate, and then you go on
it.
with a probe. So it is an inquire, articulate, and probe. That's brilliant. That's
Yeah,
really good. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So and back to our mantra, own your conversation. This is a challenging thing for somebody to do in a challenging moment,
Yeah.
but this would be an example of somebody really owning their conversation, not being sidetracked or blown off course by the power of the challenging voice, but responding to it. Now, there is a layer of emotional maturity about
Yes.
this, of emotional intelligence, as it were. I've heard it, I've processed it. And I repeat the point I made earlier, which is to listen and think beyond the sound.
Mhm.
You know, we're getting with a challenging voice is probably some very maybe some intense or possibly even aggressive facial expressions. We might body posture, which is very firmly presented, and then we've got the sound of the voice. Now, this is powerful communication. We're going to pick all of this up in a nanosecond. But when you know that's what it is, when you're conscious that that's what's coming at you, then you can say, aha, I can see what's going on here. What I need to do is really pay attention to what's being said. And that just lowers the energy
Mhm.
considerably, takes some of that fury out of the challenge.
Wow. I like the advice that you gave, Kevin, and it's the whole idea of lowering the energy and slowing the pace down. Because so often, and I think for me, very often, I think for me, when I respond a challenge with a challenge, it's usually it doesn't really quite end well.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
it's a fight, and I think, and I like what you said: inquire, articulate, and then probe, and go on from there. One of the things actually I've done for myself is to mentally tell myself, never ever respond a challenge with a challenge. But there are a few voices that I can use. I think I hear from you, inquire is one of the good responses. For me, my go-to strategy, Kevin, is to use the articulate voice. So essentially, I kind of read back to the person. So you're telling me about this and that and this and that. Did I get you? All right. If it is, can you just give me a little bit of time for me to respond back to you? Now, that whole idea of the articulate or the inquire voice in your instance really, I think, helps us to slow that down, lower the temperature a little bit, and get people into that eyeball to eyeball recognition that, hey, we are two adults here having a conversation. Let's talk about it. I love that very much. Go for it.
I, I heard a great story yesterday. I was talking to a client, catching
Yeah.
up with her, and she told this extraordinary story. So this is about the overuse of challenge. This is
Okay.
fundamentally
Mm-hmm.
act. But I'll make it as brief as I can. She's walking through the factory one day and with a member of her team, and the HR director shouts across the room, points to my client's colleague and says, "You, my office now." Okay. So so my client looks across and says, excuse me, this is a member of my team and her name is Fiona. And if you'd like to speak to her, please address her by her name. At which point, the same 6'1" Texan HR director says, and you go to your office now.
Oh, wow.
A really extreme behavior.
Wow.
And so my client, and the way she handled it, she said she was really intimidated because I'm 5'1" and she's 6'1" and bellowing down at me, and that's
Mm.
6 foot without her stilettos on. And I just said to her, just hang on a second. Please don't speak to me like that. If you'd like to have a conversation about what's going on, then I'm very happy to do that. It's a really fascinating story. Well, what really struck me, even though, is the way she very, very quickly controlled herself in that situation. It must have taken a lot of energy to do that. Assess the situation, control herself, and moved to a very measured form of the voice to correct. Please don't speak to my colleague like that. So it's very, very clear, very boundary, very boundary. And essentially it's a parent talking to a toddler who's having a bit of a tantrum. That's what it's
Yeah.
about. So yeah, it's fresh on my mind. So I thought I'd
Oh,
just
that's great.
share.
Great story. Great story. And that's really a great story about owning your conversation, isn't it? You
Yeah.
do not want the conversations of people around you to rob you of what truly or truly of who you are, what you want to say, and what you stand for. So I love that story. Really, really. You actually had another story, Kevin. I think the last time we were kind of shooting the blue here, you told me a story about the Damn United story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so there's a wonderful there's lots of media out there about the use of the voice to challenge and its accentuated form, because the accentuated form can be quite colourful,
Mhm.
as we've just heard
Yeah.
in our story. So there's a great movie about the former Leeds United English football team, Leeds United soccer team in the 1970s, with a manager called Brian Clough.
Hmm.
So Leeds United at the time, in the 1970s, was a soccer team that was winning lots of competitions. It had a reputation for foul play. And the manager of that team, a man called Don Revie, left to manage the England team. And it turned out unsuccessfully. Um, and so he was succeeded by Brian Clough, who was a very good manager, but a very controversial figure.
Mm.
And Brian Clough insisted that he had a way in which the Leeds United players would continue to win, but they would adopt more fair play tactics. And so the way he went about this was really quite hilarious. And the film depicts this. If you can watch the movie, The Damned United, it's a
All right.
great film.
Spoiler alert here, everybody. Spoiler alerts. Yeah.
Spoiler alert. And first training session, Brian Clough turns up. The Leeds United players are on the pitch, sort of training, sort of smoking cigarettes, as was the way of professional footballers in the day. And he walks up to everybody, and I'll paraphrase. He basically says to them, "Okay, I'm the new boss. You need to know that all of these trophies you've won, all of these league competitions, all of these FA Cups, you haven't won a single thing fairly. You've cheated for every single one." And of course, the team stand and look at each other and think, "What on earth is going
Oh my
on
God.
here?" And that sets up a platform for monumental failure. And he lasts 2 months.
Oh my God.
He's gone within 2 months, and the view is he's lost the support of the dressing room,
Mhm.
if he ever had. But from his point of view, I imagine this is about, we need to shake things up here. I'm going to go in and be really direct. I'm going to challenge them very forcefully. I've got to make them think about what they do. And so that's very clear that was the intention, but it was equally clear that for
Yeah.
a number of reasons, it just didn't work.
Yeah. Great story. Love that. So let's shift gears a little bit. We've been talking quite a bit on the accentuated, the risky use of the voice here for the voice of challenge. Now, what would a great challenge voice sound like? And who can you think of, famous quotes for that matter, they can think of that actually issue great challenges that move people to change, to transformation? So what's a great way of using the voice of challenge?
So probably the world famous quote is the JF Kennedy quote: "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country."
Yeah.
And when I say that, you can hear
Yeah.
just how different that is from the overuse of the voice that really we've been excitedly talking about so far in this session. This is much calmer. A good challenge doesn't have to be aggressively stated. It has to be thoughtfully positioned. And what's nice about this quote is linguistically, the twist:
Mhm.
ask not, ask what you can. Okay, so that refrain sort of works. I came across a similar example to that recently in a business where a managing director was complaining to his operations director that the speed of production wasn't what it needed to be. And he tried to engage in a conversation several times with the ops director about this. and it hadn't landed. He was getting a lot of defensive reaction
Hmm.
until he turned around and said, okay, if you can't go faster, can you go less slowly? And this is very powerful. This is very powerful. So it's a clear challenge. It wasn't stated aggressively. There was a hint of frustration
Hmm.
behind it, which is often what drives challenge. But the clever thing he did was just to twist the logic on its head. And this is I think is a really good example
Hmm.
of challenging.
Yeah.
Can you frame your thoughts in a way that forces someone to have to think about it from the other end of the spectrum? And the words do the work for you. The gruffness of expression or face to get the point across. Actually, the words are doing the heavy carrying for you.
Yeah. When you were sharing that, it reminded me of my own personal experience here, Kevin, when I was a young banking officer in Singapore. So,
All those years ago, Kim Pong.
oh my gosh, it's so many years ago. So that was the first banking job. I was a corporate banking guy, and every week we have these meetings that we call prayer meetings, where we basically come in and we kind of tell everybody what we have done for the week with regards to the clients that we have been pitching at and doing all that kind of stuff for business. And here I was, a young officer, and I said something like, "Oh, I met up with this client and I got him to sign a 4 million loan for this particular project." And I was so proud of what I did, Kevin. And then my senior vice president sitting across this long table, sitting across all the way to the other end of the room, in the most quiet, most confident and self-assured voice, responded to me in the following way: "Is that it? Is that all?" Oh my gosh. I looked at my colleagues and everybody were just looking away from me. I was like, gosh,
Yeah.
what just happened here? I thought I did well. And that kind of challenge, whether she's right or wrong, my gosh, it makes me like, my gosh, is $4 million not enough? How much more do you want?
So it's fascinating, isn't it? Maybe, and this is really difficult. It's interesting how this conversation has centered quite a lot on the slightly more extreme end of the voice. And we remember it so clearly when this sort of thing happens. It could be that that officer saw in you somebody who had a lot of potential and thought to themselves, okay, well, if they can do this without being pushed, I wonder how much more they can do if there's just an injection of pushing. The motive of being very much in line of, I'm going to I'm going to make sure this person can really get better results than they'd even have imagined. But it's a risky strategy. It's a
Yeah,
very risky strategy.
it is.
There's another great movie, Whiplash, you may have seen.
No, I've not watched that yet.
Jazz drummer, young jazz drummer, and he's taught by extremely controversial jazz teacher who has very questionable methods.
Hmm.
But there's a scene in the film where the jazz teacher and the jazz drummer student meet, and they end up, it's a very long story, I'll keep it short, and they end up discussing the teacher's methods.
Hmm.
And his methods are extreme. They are all about attack and undermining the individual, extreme form of challenge. So he says, people just don't realize what they're capable of. My job is to take people to the limit. The student says, well, but isn't there a line? Isn't there a line that you mustn't cross? And the jazz tutor responds by saying, no, there are no two words in the English language as bad as good job.
I love it.
Because his argument is people will settle for mediocrity unless they're pushed to the edge. And this becomes the rationalization and the justification for what objectively is extremely bad behavior. But it's interesting to look at the extremes because it colors it, and we can come back from that and understand what's much more skillful. So if I may, Kim Pong, I think I'd like to just reinforce the
Yes.
more skillful end of
Yes,
this.
please.
So the example from the managing director to the operations director, if you can't go faster, can you go less slowly, is a good one. The JFK quote is a good one. People who use this voice skillfully will be aware of the risks associated with it. So they will be calmer in the delivery of it. They will not challenge every second of the day. They will find alternative voices and strategies so that when they challenge, it really lands. And so I think that it's really important that people who have this voice and this preference are discriminating in the way they, and then it tends to work. Then it tends to have the effect. And the final thought is, and we've mentioned this a few times before, is about sound posting.
Yeah.
And actually, this is a voice that we sort of in language tend to sound post naturally in any case. Soundwave doesn't really need to teach people to do this because they do it.
Mhm.
They hear people say all the time, I just need to challenge you on.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
Now, the reason that we do that is because we know that if we challenge in the raw, we drive people to fight, flight, or freeze. We
Mhm.
create stress. When we say, look, I don't agree, I need to challenge you on that second of talk gives the other person time to prepare themselves for what's coming at them.
Mm.
And they will, that in itself will just lower the anxiety.
I love.
It's a sort of way of saying, look, I'm giving you warning, I'm giving you time so that you don't become too defensive. You can respond, you can listen to the words rather than the sentiment underneath.
I
And that's a really important technique.
I love that. And as you were saying, a thought came to my mind, which is instead of having a flight, fight, or freeze reaction, it's also 3F. It's about formulate, foster, and flourish. Formulate the
Wow.
response, foster the relationship, and flourish the idea. If a challenge is actually done really, really well. So yeah, I love it. So let's segue into the next piece here, Kevin. Now we talk often about metaphors and personas of our voices here. So let's start off with the personas of a challenge voice. What do you think are great personas to represent the voice of challenge?
I think that, and if this is a persona, a change agent
Mm.
is where the money really is. Okay. It's very difficult to be a change agent without challenging. I think entrepreneur
Like,
comes close. Entrepreneurs tend to have a degree of intolerance for all things around them, and
mhm.
nothing's ever quite good enough. It's got to be better, better, better.
Yeah,
And to some extent, some visionaries will embrace this voice because you've got to move to somewhere which is fundamentally different. So visionaries, prophets might come into that place,
mhm.
into that. So those might be some of the personas.
Yeah, those are good personas. And I want to add on one more. So if you are a superhero fan, and if you are, if you like Iron Man, then Tony Stark. I think
Okay.
as a protagonist, he's someone who's constantly challenging the authority, challenging why can't we do this. So I think Tony Stark, for those of us who follow superheroes, I think it's a good character to represent the voice of challenge. Let's move metaphors. What will be the great metaphors to represent or to describe the voice of challenge?
So I think catalyst is a thing that really comes to mind.
Oh yeah.
So dropping us in water and that catalytic reaction. I think that's what the challenge voice does really well.
Mm,
Gets to gets people to rethink what they're doing, gets them to identify inconsistencies, contradictions in what they're doing. Okay. And I that's the real power of it. I think probably, and maybe this is a little more attack than challenge, but the experience of a cold shower, woof, where
mm.
did that come? And slowly having to or struggling hard to catch up as your body temperature can't quite rise fast enough. Those sorts of things, I think, might be metaphors. But I'm sure you've got a few others, Kim Pong.
Well, yeah, I was just thinking about it. So initially, I thought I want to say it could be maybe a switch. You kind of switch it off, and you kind of change the illumination in the room. But as I was thinking about that, maybe a switch is not as good as a sudden power failure. It's like it's like suddenly all the power you lost it. So what are you going to do
Yeah.
about it? You were going in one direction, and now with no power, you can no longer go in this same direction. You're going to start looking at something else now. So I think a power failure might be a good metaphor. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think it's great. As you're talking, I think what it's reminding me of partly is what is the simplest version of challenge available? And actually, the simplest version of challenge available is the question why?
Mm-hmm.
Why? And so it's worth distinguishing this from inquiry.
Or why not? Or why not?
Well, why not? Or why not? Why exactly? It's two words. Two words. Think of it in those terms. Two words that carry such weight. Well, why not? Okay. Now I realize I'm saying that there's gesture behind that. There's a tone of voice, but those words crystallize it. It takes what, a tenth of a second to say that, and suddenly your whole world starts to reimagine itself. Okay, I don't know. Why not? Why not? Why not? It's really, really powerful in its effects. It's not the same as an inquiry. An inquiring why is about exploration. The intent behind this is different. Why not is, I don't agree, you must change, it should be different. It packages, it contains a whole set of different meanings.
Yeah. Love it. So we are coming to the tail end of this episode. So the challenge voice is a socially risky voice. And so my question, this is the last question, not probably, it is the last question for this episode. What is your best advice to people who wants to perfect their challenge voice?
Who wants to perfect their challenge voice? Okay, I think this is simple. I think it's use the voice. Really do use the voice, but use it with discrimination. Think of when and where, the when and where for maximum impact. Don't overuse it. Use it with discrimination.
Yeah, well, when you said that, it resonated with me deeply, because I think I love the voice of challenge for myself. And I remember there was one time back in the good old days, my business partners came to me and said, Kim Pong, nothing pleases you, does it? It's like whatever we are saying, you are always tearing it down. And I must say, I'm probably the most unaware person in the group, because I responded with, when did I do that? I have no idea. So I think when you said about using the challenge voice discriminately and use it intentionally at selected situations, I think that's a really, really good advice. So thank you very much. I think we are done for today. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I hope this episode has been really, really useful for you as we dig into the voice of challenge and cover that voice of challenge. And if you like what you're hearing or watching, go ahead and subscribe to the channel so that you can be updated on the new episodes. And if you want us to notify you each time we post a new episode, go ahead and click on the bell. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. And once again, Kevin, thank you so much for joining, for co-hosting. As we say here in Soundwave, amazing things happen between people when the quality of the conversations is good. So with that, thank you. See you, Kevin. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Kim Pong. See you again.
Adios.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Bye.